The Money Show.
Business Books.
I mean, the best friend of mine, I've been in for a book review in an awfully long time. So you're lucky, Warren Ingram, who is an executive director at Galileo Capital, because I have had a massage while talking to David Tlale, sitting in the Lexus LS 500, and the seat just did its thing. Lumbar massage, very good. Now listen, you've got a brand new book. It's your third book. This one is called Global Investing Made Easy, Your Wealth Creating Guide to International Markets, and it's by you're Warren Ingram. And I think what you've done successfully again is make it readable and actually make it understandable, because a lot of people are really scared of this stuff, as you know.
Yeah, and I think, it's actually all the questions we get from listeners and on social media from people asking questions and just you realize that a lot of their questions are what a lot of the people in the financial industry would call basic, and we just realize we make so many assumptions in the financial industry about what people know, and it's crazy. We need to understand that, like when a doctor talks to you or a mechanic talks to you about your car, the same applies to your money. You need to start on first principles. So that was the idea with the book, was to say, let's go from like really basic first principles, explain it from the ground up, and hopefully, between my mother-in-law and my father, if they can understand it, I know I've done a good job.
How do you stay on the straight and narrow of plain language, though? Because it is so easy to revert to the language of the financial services industry, because it is your language. It is your first language. English is your second language. And I get that in giving financial advice, you've had many years of practice, but somehow in writing it down, there is a danger that you revert to type.
Well, that's true, but I think it's taken probably a decade, in truth, of hard work focusing on this and making sure that I develop a kind of an instant loathing and almost an allergy to any kind of jargon, and including financial jargon, and then I catch myself kind of getting agitated, and I'm not sure why, and then I realize I've spewed some financial jargon at some poor unsuspecting person. But now, after a decade of practice, especially building up to the first book and all the way from then to now, I'm not going to say I'm proficient, but I'm much better at figuring out this jargon and avoiding it and finding simple ways to say financial stuff.
You are well known for really liking index investing, low cost index funds where you don't have an active manager that you have to pay in order to manage money in and money out. But you also, in this book, focus extensively on how to combine this idea of index investing with managed funds, because the world is a big and exciting place, and there are a whole bunch of incredibly talented people around the world who actually are quite good at managing money effectively.
Absolutely. And I think, what's changed dramatically over the last decade is that there are many fewer companies that are deciding to list on stock exchanges. So, in the past, we would be fairly comfortable a decade ago that, if we bought an index, we would get access to pretty much all of the world's great businesses when we bought a global index. But that's changed. And there are a lot of good companies now that are fairly big and are changing the way that the world works, whether it be through getting vaccines, so biotechnology, or transport, or technology just in general, and we can't access them because they are choosing not to list on a stock exchange anywhere. And so the trick now is, how do we take an index which I believe in, and I think it's still a brilliant way for investors to grow their money, and then find ways to pay fund managers to access those unlisted companies for us. And so that's that's kind of the big dynamic shift over the last decade, is finding fund managers to buy these companies for us because they're simply not listed on stock exchanges, which means unit trusts and exchange traded funds, pension funds, many of them just can't buy those companies.
Is this where you start talking about investment trusts? Because these, it sounds terribly scary, and trusts are frightening. But these essentially are a bit like just regular investment companies managing regular unit trusts. It's just a different structure, and they can access different kinds of investments that perhaps are just a little bit more exciting than out of the public eye than many of the famous ones.
Yeah, so interesting thing about investment trusts is that they predate unit trusts by decades. So some of the oldest ones, were around in the 1860s and the 1880s. And the big difference is that when they take money in from investors, it's called permanent capital. So they don't need to pay the money out to investors when an investor needs money. The way the investor gets their money is they actually sell the share on a stock exchange. And so because the investment trusts have permanent capital, they can take a very different time horizon to a unit trust. They can buy a private company that they believe is going to deliver decades of growth and then hold that company for all of that time. And, if it goes through good times and bad, that's fine. They can ride out those peaks and troughs with relative ease. And I think it's a great complement to an index. And I think for me, that's the kind of key innovation in global investing in the last decade.
And as always, portion of this goes directly to the Serendipity Trust, which puts kids through school and through university. We discussed that last week, which is really, really nice. You don't make money out of these books. Have you started number 4 yet?
No, I'm going to wait for more questions from people and see what people want to hear from me, if they want to hear anything, and I'll start writing them.
Okay, good. I was just checking out what you're slacking off. Warren Ingram, thank you. Global Investing Made Easy. Certainly very understandable, very accessible. Typically, Warren, small words, short sentences, were written slowly so that you can keep up. That was patronizing. I beg your pardon. You know what patronizing is, of course. It's when you talk down to people. Anyway. Global Investing Made Easy, your wealth creating guide to international markets. That's by Warren Ingram, who's a regular contributor to The Money Show. And I'm delighted that he has chosen to write a third book. And the global investing theme is one that is strong. South Africa's GDP makes up less than 0.5% of the world's GDP. Our stock market is less than 1% of global stock markets. And this book introduces you to that big and exciting world.